A couple days ago, I did a segment talking about the African American vote for Donald Trump. According to 3 polls, his support in the African American community is up. And the rule is, they say, if a Republican gets at least 20% of the black community to support them, a Democrat will never win again, assuming they maintain that level of support. But we also need to consider the Hispanic vote. And as it turns out, socialists like Ocasio Cortez and Bernie Sanders are actually scaring Latino voters, Hispanic voters, particularly those who fled socialist countries or whose families did. Now, for the longest time, Republicans have smeared Democrats as socialists, and I think now we can plainly see those old attacks back in the day are completely fictitious, okay? The moderate Democrats today are fending off an assault from the far left avowed socialists, and it's actually bad for the Democrats as a whole. Check out the story from Bloomberg. Democrats try to reassure Latinos over Trump's socialism cry. I find it particularly funny they call it Trump's socialism cry, when in reality, Ocasio Cortez is, last I checked, a card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialists of America. Now, she herself is a Latina, but there are a lot of people who know just how bad it was. In Florida, where Trump needs to win to get re-election for the most part, many people understand how bad it was in Cuba, and they don't want to support socialists. And as the Democrats lose to the socialists, the Latino voters aren't stupid. They see what's happening. And now we can see this. Trump and Republicans are courting Florida Latinos. Democrats in the state are worried. Quote, I feel we have taken our eye off the ball, former Democratic gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum said about Latinos who are necessary to win. Let me remind all of you, necessary to win. Now, again, Trump could go around screaming socialism all day and night, but doesn't need to anymore. Bernie Sanders is basically in second or first place, depending on which poll you're tracking, and he calls himself a socialist. He campaigns with Ocasio Cortez, who is a socialist. Naturally, you are going to see people whose either themselves or their families have fled socialist countries not wanting to support Democrats. I believe, and I've said this for a variety of reasons, that Donald Trump and the Republicans in 2018 are going to sweep. They're going to take over basically every branch of government again. And the Republican Party may actually become some kind of super party where they have conservatives and moderates together, leaving only around 24% of the country to form the other party, a massive coalition, as moderate Democrats are being forced out. What I want to show you is this story about Chuck Schumer. Does Chuck Schumer have an AOC problem? Amid the talk of a primary challenge, the Senate Democratic leader cast a surprising vote against the USMCA trade deal, bucking most of his party. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think we are seeing the takeover of Ocasio Cortez and the socialist left in the Democratic Party, and it's going to scare enough voters away from the Democrats so that they never win again, unless these far left types get pushed out. The far left is not the majority of this country. This country is actually center right, according to Gallup. And so Trump doesn't really need to go on the offensive with the socialism claims. They're doing it for him. Today, in a long line of videos where I've said, here's why Trump is going to win, I bring you the next in the saga, how the Democrats are losing Latino voters over socialism. But we'll start with Florida. Now, before we move on, head over to timcast.com/donate if you would like to support my work. There's several ways you can give: cryptocurrency, PayPal, a physical address. But of course, the best thing you can do, just share this video. The YouTube algorithm is an unkind beast, but the best thing for overcoming this is just word of mouth. So if YouTube's not going to show my videos to anybody, then it's seriously going to hurt me because they're placing people in front of me. So that actually reduces my visibility. But if you share this video, it overcomes that, and it's way more powerful than YouTube could ever hope to imagine. So if you do like what I do, please consider sharing. I will start first. A little light here, talking about this NBC article about how Democrats are worried that Trump is actually courting Latinos. And I must remind you, in my past video, I pointed out Democrats were freaking out that Trump was courting the black vote as well. Dare I say, the Republicans are trying to get minority votes, and the Democrats have no idea how to respond. NBC reports, the Trump campaign events keep coming. President Donald Trump has made Florida central to his re-election, holding 9 campaign rallies in the state since he was elected and zeroing in on Hispanics. Vice President Mike Pence has also been spending an ample amount of time in Florida. He just wrapped up a rally in Kissimmee as part of the Latinos for Trump coalition, pledging to the largely Puerto Rican crowd, the administration will support the island after the earthquakes and touting the strong U.S. economy. In addition to the rallies, Trump has held numerous events in the state addressing its diverse groups, such as Venezuelans and Cuban Americans. And there it is. Do you know what's interesting about Venezuela and Cuba? Socialism. And many of the people whose families fled, or they fled themselves, are not going to support more socialism, especially when what Bernie Sanders proposes is very similar to what Venezuela was proposing. And people lived under Cuba for a long time, trying to escape. Why would they vote for more? It turns out many don't want to, and they're flocking to Trump. They say, at one of the events on January 3rd, Trump launched the Evangelicals for Trump coalition from a South Florida megachurch, attended by thousands of Latinos. Mauricio Tamayo, 52, a member of the congregation, said he didn't like Trump at first. I wasn't used to his style. I thought he was arrogant, but he grows on you. He said as audience members raised their hands in prayer. He speaks what's on his mind, according to the government employee and Colombia native who said his 401k has grown exponentially. Trump won Florida in 2016 by less than 1 percentage point and most likely needs to carry the state to win re-election. It's the state where Trump has the greatest amount of support among Latinos at around 34%. But I want to talk to you a bit more about Ocasio Cortez and socialism, because one thing we've been seeing for a long time is how she's winning. She is. OK, look, you don't have to like her to recognize Ocasio Cortez and Bernie Sanders are seriously making gains in the Democratic Party. Justice Democrats and Cenk Uygur are doing well, tremendously well. We'll see if Cenk Uygur is of the Young Turks. You may be familiar. We'll see if he wins. But listen, I can disagree with them politically and still recognize their amazing victories and their challenge to the Democratic Party. More power to all of you. Congratulations on your wins. In my opinion, the way I see it, this is going to force moderate voters and former moderate Democrats to the Republican Party, like we saw with Jeff Van Drew. And if you now lose not just the African-American vote, but the Latino vote as well, how could the Democrats ever win again? I will remind all of you, I was wrong in 2018 when I thought that Republicans would take the House and possibly a supermajority in the midterm election. I was dead wrong. There was a lot of data I didn't have, and I could absolutely be wrong now. For some reason, there are a lot of people who seem to think I'm always right. I always see these people on Twitter. They're like, you think you're so smart, you're always right. And I'm like, no, I don't. Absolutely not. I can literally just read you this article from today about how Hispanic voters are scared of socialism, and they actually point out Ocasio Cortez. Now, I will say, to be fair, it's not just AOC, but she plays a huge role. Let me explain why. While the Republicans can absolutely play this line of, look at the socialists, ooh, the Democrats are socialists, it didn't used to be as effective. It kind of was, but not entirely, because the Democrats would deny it. No, we're not socialists. Calm down, they would say. And I remember when I was younger and they called Obama a socialist, I laughed and I said, no, he's not. Today, I can't say that. You know why? Because Ocasio Cortez is a card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and Bernie Sanders calls himself a socialist. What do you want me to say? They're not socialists even when they claim to be and are part of or AOC is a part of the literal socialist organization of prominence in America? Yeah, sorry. If socialism is scaring people, it doesn't need to be coming from Trump scaring them about Democrats. They're doing it themselves. And they point this out in Bloomberg. Check this out. Democrats appeal to Latino voters who fled socialist countries. They report Democrats seeking to counter President Donald Trump's use of socialism as a slur can look to a year-long effort to fight back now underway in Florida. Trump frequently attacks Warren, Sanders as socialists in the mold of progressives in Congress, like Representative Ocasio-Cortez, who are pushing the party to adopt far-left policies. I want to be fair and tell you, it is both. Of course, the Republicans are targeting Democrats, calling them socialists. Elizabeth Warren calls herself a capitalist, but there's no arguing against it at this point. Okay, what are you supposed to say? Ocasio-Cortez is winning. Let me show you something. Okay, this is really important. Chuck Schumer, according to The Atlantic, may be scared that Ocasio-Cortez will challenge him for the Senate seat and he will lose. Schumer has nowhere near the public support Ocasio-Cortez does. Not because Democrats are socialists, but because the socialists are mobilizing and pushing hard enough to upset passive liberal voters. The Atlantic writes, amid talk of a primary challenge, The Senate Democrat leader cast a surprising vote against the USMCA, bucking most of his party. His reason? The USMCA didn't deal with climate change. They're speculating here, and it could be wrong, that Schumer is terrified. When it comes to a primary challenge, he won't have the progressive bona fides to go up against AOC. She is taking over. Accept it, Democrats. I think it's bad news because we can clearly see in the news how Hispanics who fled socialist countries are scared of this, and it's giving Trump more power. But so be it, man. Look, if you're a progressive and you want to win, take it, I guess, but Republicans are going to dominate. Because I'll tell you this. Gallup reported, okay, and I showed this before, that it's like 35% of the country is conservative, 35% is moderate, and then you have around 24% liberal. So what do you think happens when Democrat voters who are mostly like union working, union Democrats or blue dog Democrats and the far left takes over? They're going to be like, not for me, thanks, bye. And they're going to go join the Republican Party like Jeff Van Drew did. Okay, you know Jeff Van Drew, we've talked about him. This guy is a Democrat across the board. He's like an old school Democrat, okay? Now that they've gone far left, Van Drew doesn't really fit anymore. I wouldn't call the guy a Republican. I think it's nuts. He's for like gender equality bills, banning offshore drilling, not a Republican, yet he just joined the Republican Party and got an endorsement from Donald Trump. If he takes his voters with him, and he likely will, how could the Democrats ever hope to win? You know what? I will tell you this. We will see what happens in November. I am not the smartest person in the world. I am giving you my thoughts and opinions based on the news as I'm reading it. It's really annoying how people will like, in a year from now, they'll pull up a video where they're like, I can't believe Tim thought that. It's like, well, yeah, I was reading an article from Bloomberg at the time that said it. What do you want me to do? Not believe it? See the future? Sorry, hindsight is 2020. Let's read. They say, this attack has particular resonance among Hispanic voters, particularly those from socialist countries. Democrats were stung by a narrow loss in a gubernatorial race in 2018 that featured similar accusations, and Florida Democrats are looking to blunt those attacks in the crucial 2020 swing state. The party is reaching out to voters whose negative experiences with governments in Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba have heightened their concerns about socialism and made them receptive to Trump's criticisms. Do you know? Okay, listen. Yes, the Republicans smear the Democrats all the time, but how easy has AOC made it? Look, I'm not saying you have to hate AOC. You can like her. That's fine. Okay, this is not a dig at her or Bernie or any of these progressives or socialists. I'm just letting you know Republicans are going to win because of it. And I know I'm not playing this, game of vote blue no matter who. I absolutely do not believe in that. There's going to be a lot of people who would say like, oh, we must vote for Warren, but I'll vote for whoever gets the nomination. I'm not saying that. I'm just letting you know a moderate coalition can defeat the Republicans. It's not going to happen, partly because the activist left are really far left relative to the average American. But they are taking over, and it's precisely because liberals are passive. Don't take my word for it. The data's in it's YouGov data, more in Common Study. I showed all the time. We can see they call it the exhausted majority, passive liberals. They're not actively engaging in politics. They're not going out and voting in primaries, and they tend to be moderate. But I'll tell you this. I'm willing to bet people are sweating bullets in Virginia after they didn't care to go out for their local elections and the Democrats swept the state across the board and now their rights are being challenged and they're freaking out. Tomorrow, it's going to get nuts. We'll see what happens. Let's read a little bit more. They say this. Over the past year, the state Democratic Party has hired a Latino outreach director, launched a Spanish language radio show, and trained surrogates to make their case on Univision, Telemundo, and local TV and radio. It's also seeking to register more Latino voters as part of a $2.8 million effort on voter registration. What I think is so funny about this is the Democrats are in panic mode over this. They're spending nearly $3 million. Was it $3 million they just say? What is it? A $2.8 million effort on voter registration. And all Trump has to do, spending not a cent, is look over and say, for one, they're secular atheists for the most part. But more importantly, they're socialists. I think what people don't really understand is that my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that there is a very strong and powerful Christian community among Hispanics. I was just in Mexico City. I was talking to my buddy, and he said most of the country, it's either Protestant or Catholic, but most people are. Way more than America. In America, it's like 63 to 66%, I think. Religion is on the decline. But you have large communities, the Black community and the Latino community, they're very, very religious. It was always interesting to me why the Republicans did so poorly among these groups when they share Christianity with these minority groups. Well, Trump's absolutely taking advantage of this. So that is an aside. We'll read on because I want to keep this focused on socialism. But yes, religion will play a huge role. They say roughly 1 in 6 registered voters in Florida is Hispanic, according to the Pew Research Center. Exit polls showed that Cuban Americans, who make up roughly a third of Florida Hispanics, were about twice as likely to vote for Trump in 2016 as non-Cuban Hispanics. I wonder why. Socialism. Democrats nationally fear the attack is effective enough to peel off votes from other Latin American immigrants in 2020. Charges of socialism have absolutely worked in the past, said Evelyn Perez Verdia, a Colombian American consultant who works in South Florida. They are playing with the fears of our communities, she said. No, listen, I mean, to an extent, yes, I'm absolutely willing to accept that line of attack. But you got to understand, man, I know that many Democrats are moderate. They're trying their hardest to resist the far left. But when Ocasio Cortez won, I'm willing to bet that moment Ocasio Cortez won in 2018 against in the primary against Crowley, Republicans across the country, Republican consultants, started dancing a jig. They jumped up on their desks and started dancing, pouring their fanciest, most expensive drinks, laughing at how they knew this was exactly what they needed to prove socialism. Because for the longest time, they've screamed socialism at people who aren't socialists. Now they can be like, she's a member of the DSA. She calls herself a socialist. Don't take it from us. And there it is. People are going to be like, yeah, that's too much for me. I'm not interested. Joshua Cart, a former spokesman for Andrew Gillum, a Florida Democratic gubernatorial candidate in 2016, said he's concerned the National Party is underestimating the potency of that messaging, especially in such a closely fought state. Gillum lost by slightly less than half a percentage point in a race in which both Trump and the Republican candidate Ron DeSantis painted him as a far-left socialist who wants to turn Florida into Venezuela, a label Gillum rejected and fact checkers rated as false. I don't know enough about Gillum, but I do know that my understanding, I could be wrong, is that he does operate in line to an extent with the progressive left wing of the Democratic Party, this new left, this reaching of, they're reaching out to these progressive socialist types. But I'll tell you this, man, whether you tell somebody in Florida, because I lived in Miami for a while, you tell them they want to make that like Venezuela, and people are gonna, I'll just say, they're not going to be happy with you. Okay, I lived in the farmland, the Redlands in Miami for a year, and I worked down there for 2 years. Yeah, there's a reason why people operate in Miami when they're from other countries. It's because America is awesome and we have freedom and opportunity. So, you know what they say to me in Miami? They said Miami was the capital of Latin America. And don't take my word for it. That's what people would tell me, the business people. People from all of these different Central and South American countries headquarter their companies and they work out of Miami because, well, as a massive Latino community, people speak Spanish, but it's free. They know what it's like to operate in those countries, so they come here instead. What do you think is going to happen when you come to these people who fled this in fear, starvation? Think about this. The people, Nicaragua, right? Was it which countries? I want to make sure I get them right. Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba. What about the people fleeing those countries and coming up the migrant caravans? You want to tell them now, hey, you know that country you fled? We want to do that here. They're going to be like, no. I don't want to go back to that, right? Let's read a little bit more, and then I want to talk about the Democrats' fear. Chuck Schumer, AOC is going to knock him out of the race. They say, still, Karp said the accusation may have been effective in damaging Gillum's campaign in a state where races are often decided by the thinnest of margins. In the research I have seen, the word is a gateway to people believing other negative narratives about Democrats. By leading with socialism, Republicans can inject other arguments about Democrats that would otherwise be dismissed by a lot of voters. Trump has signaled that he will intensify those attacks regardless of the eventual Democratic nominee. They say one recent series of ads by the Trump campaign on Facebook claimed that every 2020 Democrat candidate has embraced the ideas of radical socialists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar to try and appeal to their extreme left-wing base. We've seen socialism completely fail in countries like Venezuela and Greece, the ad says before asking voters to take an official socialism approval poll. Trump is hardly the first Republican to do this. We get it. But now I want to move on to this article. Chuck Schumer. I know I mentioned it several times now, and I'll wrap up on this point. They say that, the party has embraced the ideals of socialism. And some Democrats say, it's a smear. They're lying. We're not all socialists. Let me remind you a couple things. Ocasio Cortez is a card-carrying member of the DSA, or at least last I checked she was. Apparently there was some story recently about her trying to walk back those claims, like, look, when people try to smear me, blah, blah, blah. Bernie Sanders calls himself a socialist. Elizabeth Warren tried distancing herself, saying, no, I'm a capitalist. But Chuck Schumer recently voted against the USMCA, even though Nancy Pelosi praised it. Nancy Pelosi claimed that she was the one who worked on it, that it was because of the Democrats the bill actually became good. She said Trump didn't do enough, so we fixed it. That's why it took so long. And then Democrat Chuck Schumer comes out and says, nope, not enough on climate change. Why? Well, basically, as the story lays out, AOC, well, I'll just show you this. Ocasio Cortez is stockpiling campaign cash. She's got over, I think, $5 million, some ridiculously large amount. And people are speculating that she may launch a primary campaign against Gillibrand or Schumer. So Schumer is shaking in his boots. And what does he do? He says the UMCA doesn't do enough on climate change, proving Trump right. When he says to these people, they are embracing the politics of Ocasio Cortez. They are. They are. Not completely, not everybody, but they are. What do you think happened? What do you think was going through the minds of these people who fled these socialist countries when they were watching the Democratic debate? And they said, how many of you want to give healthcare to non-citizens? And they all raised their hand. And they're thinking, like, they're literally talking about exactly what the cause the problems in my country. So it's not every Latino voter. I want to make sure that's clear. It is primarily these people who fled these countries or whose family did. But that's a major benefit to Trump. Socialism is not popular. Do I have this? Yeah, right here. Less than half in the U.S. would vote for a socialist president, May 9th, 2019. This is Gallup. It's not popular. Trump knows it. Republicans know it. And now they have Ocasio Cortez to use as their poster child to prove they've been right the whole time. And when Chuck Schumer, of all people, starts voting in line with AOC, they can then say, see, even party leadership is adopting what AOC wants. When they look at impeachment, they say, see, even Nancy Pelosi finally caves to the outrage of Ocasio Cortez. They are embracing socialism. Now, are they really? Technically, no. Ocasio Cortez isn't about socialists, so is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is kind of, I mean, we'll see what happens. According to the Veritas expose, at least one staffer thinks Sanders is actually further left than he claims to be. But the reality is that Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, and many of these Democrats are not socialists. But I'll tell you what, they will vote that way out of fear, because I believe these people just want the job. I look at Schumer, Pelosi, Nadler. These are the do-nothing Democrats who want the keys to the castle. So I can absolutely respect AOC and some of these other progressive Democrats who at least believe in something. But I look at Pelosi, Schiff, Schumer, Nadler. They just want the keys to the castle. That's all they want. They want to say, open the door, let me in the ivory tower. I want to sit up top. That's what that's all I am. So I certainly don't respect that. And you know what? I'll tell you this. There's a lot of things I don't like AOC for, but it's mostly a disagreement in policy. I think she does some annoying things on Twitter when she's like, basically everything is Republican. Oh, here come the Republicans again. I'm like, no, dude, when someone criticizes you, it doesn't mean they're a Republican. But I'll tell you this. There's a lot more I like about Bernie Sanders and AOC than I do about Schumer, Pelosi, Nadler, the do-nothing, keys to the castle, ivory tower Democrats. That's all they want. That's what they represent. Look at Nancy Pelosi coming out with those commemorative pens. Come on, man. That's sick. You know what? I see them, and I see someone who says, can you please let me in? I'd like to sit in the comfy chair. I look at AOC, I look at Bernie Sanders, and I see people who say, I want this system by any means necessary. I absolutely respect people who have a real mission, though I think their ideas are terrifying and insane. There's so much more to be said for someone who actually believes in what they're doing, as opposed to a grifter, yes, like Pelosi, who just wants the job. That's it. I'll leave it there, though. We'll see what happens, at the end of the year. But I think it's fair to say now, in my long series about why Trump is going to win again, we have increased African-American support, Hispanic support for Trump, as well as the fear of socialism and the economic factors. Take these into consideration. And if you're someone on the left and you're mad that I'm ragging on AOC or whatever, well, so be it. But if you ignore but I'll say this, ignore what I say at your own peril. I'm not saying this to be disrespectful or to insult you. I'm telling you how I see it. I'm telling you there are stories published, numerous stories outlining this fear and this problem. If you don't pay attention, you will lose. We'll see you all at 6 p.m. youtube.com/TimCastNews. It is a different channel. And thanks for hanging out.